So now I would like to call upon the Director Urban at CRISIL Risk and Infrastructure Solutions Limited, Shri Abhay Kantak ji, to kindly come and grace this podium for his wonderful thoughts. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and respected dignitaries, fellow friends, colleagues, and the entire audience. I represent CRISIL Risk and Infrastructure Solutions Limited. We are a consulting division of CRISIL Limited, which is a financial ratings company. We work, at least the team that I work with is the Urban Consulting Division. We work with cities in India, helping them to improve services, and water and sanitation is one such area. So I'll just share, how we are looking at this sector and what is CSR doing for for the water and sanitation sector, and what is the way forward. It's a very short presentation, so I'll not take too much time. Next slide. So we just looked at how this sector is performing, and we looked at how Maharashtra is performing compared to the India average. And we looked at what Niti Aayog has to say, and Niti Aayog has very good things to say about Maharashtra as the leading industrial state. Also, as far as the SDG goals are concerned, they are performing very well. It's only in the coverage of water supply services within the households where there is something where Maharashtra still has to do a lot of work. Also, the entire nation also has something which an area of improvement. The Jal Jeevan program of the Government of India probably will bridge that gap, and that's the expectation. If you look at the SDG score, Maharashtra is at 90 compared to the national average of 83. And the Niti Aayog classifies various states as aspirant with a score of 0 to 48, performer 50 to 64, and front runner is 65 to 99. So Maharashtra is considered as the front runner state as per the Niti Aayog's index. Next slide, please. So we just looked at how the best states are performing, and Maharashtra is ranked 6th as far as the SDG goals are concerned. This excludes the union territories part, so we're looking at states, and we find Goa, Telangana, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh and Bihar performing at a better level than what Maharashtra is. So this is what the Niti Aayog has to say. Next slide. So we as CRISIL, as a rating agency, we just wanted to look at the financial outlays for CSR over the last 7 years, beginning 2013. And we have reached a landmark in 2020 where 1 lakh crore plus money cumulatively has been allocated under CSR funding. And if you look at the last 2 years, we find that the allocation has been quite significant. Close to 40,000 crores has been spent in the last 2 years. I'm talking of 18, 19 and 19, 20. We at CRISIL, we look at the annual reports of various companies and see how they are spending that money. What is coming out as 53% of the money has been spent on education, skill development, water and sanitation. That's the allocation. We have found that in the last 2 years, there is a lot of funding related to the pandemic effort. But if you look at the non-pandemic effort, we find that 90% of the companies are spending money on water and sanitation. So water and sanitation as a sector is attracting significant interest from the corporates. And if you look at what kind of funding that is happening, we find that the funding from on CSR is funding infrastructure, hardware, and also the softer knowledge capacity building aspect. Next slide, please. So we have been working on the water and sanitation sector, and what are the challenges that we see? And this is true for not just for water and sanitation, but also for a lot of the other funding programs of government. Government is very quick to allocate money for a sector, but whether there is an institution or a framework and how that money has to be spent is something that government is weak to formulate. So expenditure is possible, but whether that expenditure is happening in the right direction or getting the institution right is something that requires a lot of attention. So it is our suggestion for corporates is not to prioritize infrastructure, but to build the capacity of government institutions to spend the money in the right direction by providing technical expertise, sharing of knowledge, giving them exposure to how that sector has to be better managed. I think the country, we do not see a financing deficit, we find a institutional deficit as far as how the money can be allocated. So capacity building should be the right area that the CSR funding can be allocated. And the last point. So what the message is that through the NGOs, be the partners or the implementing vehicles, how the CSR funding can bridge this gap of institutional capacity or actually channelizing that investment in the right direction. So with this, I just conclude my presentation to focus more on the softer aspect rather than creating that infrastructure which the government is doing more than required. Thank you.